The Get Rich Slow Club podcast is a collaboration between Tash Etchman from Tash and Ana Christina from Perla. The Get Rich Slow Club acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we record on. From coast to coast, across land, waters, and communities, we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Any advice is general and does not consider your financial situation, needs, or objectives, so consider whether it's appropriate for you.
Welcome to the Get Rich Slow Club podcast, where we take you from beginner to confident investor,
where we can teach you everything you need to know about investing.
So come get rich slow with us.
I have Harry back with me again today, and we're going to chat about how he managed to buy $1.2 million in property at 22. Congrats, that's incredible.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Thank you. Can you give us a quick intro for people who haven't heard the last episode with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Harry. I work as a buyer's advocate in Melbourne. We help first home buyers and family home buyers, so only people who are owner-occupiers, to buy their property in Melbourne. We work specifically with budgets under $2 million, and we find our sweet spot is around $1 million. So really that entry-level property. And outside of real estate, my main areas of interest are financial education, financial literacy, anything to do with, self-development and finance.
Amazing. And what's the buyer's advocacy that you work for if anyone wants to come and use you as their agent?
It's Wallace Advocates. So we're Melbourne-based. We only buy in Melbourne, only for people who want to live in the home they're buying.
Amazing. I've heard so many good things from, is it Wallace Advocates? It's called now? Yeah.
Yeah.
So it started by Emily. Was it called Emily Wallace before?
Yeah. It's Emily's business. It was originally Emily Wallace Buyers Advocates. She ran that, or she still runs it, but it was called Emily Wallace Buyers Advocates for 5 years. And then since February of this year, it's been Wallace Advocates.
Amazing. Got such a good reputation, such a good company.
Thank you.
What's your money win or loss for the week or the day?
My money win is thanks to my sister and boss, Emily. It was my birthday recently, and she purchased me these vouchers for this breathwork and cold plunge sauna class thing I've been doing recently.
Okay.
It's called Inner Studio in Collingwood. It's a great place, but it's a little bit expensive.
Is that the new one that's $150 that I've seen?
No, that's EQ.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. My sister sent me that too. I was like, I'm not paying that.
No, it's huge. Yeah. For 3 hours or something. It's crazy.
Yeah, it seems very immersive. But the one I do is $45 a session, and it's an hour and a half, which is still pricey. Mm-hmm. But my money win is that I got 5 sessions gifted to me. Oh. So I've been going recently, but not having to pay for it.
Great.
And that's my money win.
Amazing. That's so good. Thanks, Emily.
Yeah, thank you, Em.
It's a good value spend as well if you really enjoy it. $45 seems okay if it's something that really adds to your week.
Yeah, I would say it's up there in terms compared to a gym membership, because I put it in the same category. But the difference it makes for the rest of my day and my ability to deal with stress, which is kind of what my job relies on, means that to me it's definitely worth it.
Do you have a gym membership as well?
Yes. Just at Zap, still on $10.99 because I joined 100 years ago.
Yep, bargain. I love that. Yeah, it is. I like doing reformer Pilates, but that's really pricey when you compare it to a gym membership that's $15, $20 a week. It really adds up. And I have a gym membership and I go to Pilates as well. So it starts getting pretty pricey, but I think it's worth it sometimes.
I don't think you can put a price, so long as you can afford it, on your mental and physical health, which I think are both benefit from those things.
Yeah, and I don't go to the gym that often, but Canberra, where I live now, is really cold, and I like having the option just to walk on the treadmill, because I find I'm oh no, it's 1 degree, I don't want to go outside. But if I know I can go to the gym, be warm, read my book, I'm going to walk so much easier. So I think just having that, making it easier is definitely worth it for me.
Love that, because some people might go, it's cold outside, I'm not moving my legs this morning.
No, I'm driving 5 minutes to the gym. I can walk to the gym, but I drive anyway, so I can be in the warm car.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Hack.
My money win is I've been loving the Accor Plus membership. You have to pay for it. It cost me $300, but you get a free night's accommodation as well. And that equals out pretty quickly if you're staying somewhere in Sydney. They've got these red room hotel deals that are half price hotels. I think it's 40% off, which has been really good. Where I'm staying now, it's $110 a night, close to the tram. It was 10 minutes away from where we are now. It is an apartment as well, so a bit spacious. I've got a little balcony, which is amazing. And you get 50% off food at some of the hotels as well. So I had smash avo for $9.50 for breakfast.
Oh my gosh, that's a win.
Yeah.
Surely you would pay that back in your first stay if you got a room for free and then 50% off food.
Yeah, because you can stay at the Sofitel in Sydney for your free night. So if that's $300-$400, So you've made it back like instantly. And I probably wouldn't stay there normally because I wouldn't spend $300 on accommodation, but with the amount I've been traveling, it's so worth it. And I stayed at like the Pullman in Sydney for $110.
Wow.
Crazy. Yeah.
You must be racking up the credit card or Qantas points as well with all your travel. Yeah.
Yes and no, but yeah, I do like to collect both Qantas and Velocity points. It's fun.
Amazing.
Yes. But back into today's very exciting episode, a bit of a background. So like $1.2 million of property at 22 is so impressive and not something most people do. What were your parents like with money? What did your family speak about money?
My parents were very different to each other with money.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was young, my parents separated and they actually both repartnered. So I had like 4 kind of parental figures.
Interesting.
All very different with how they handle money.
Mm-hmm.
I love all of them equally and respect them, but they did what they could with what they had.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, one of my parents was a lot better with money. Yeah, they understood investing, saving, all those types of things, had quite a good income. And on the other hand, my other parent was not so good with money and unfortunately didn't have a great income, and money was like a hard topic in that household.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really interesting because I lived week on, week off because they were separated. So one week I'd be living in a nice home in a nice suburb with someone who really understands money. And the other week I'd be living in a rental property that were like scraping by to pay rent, that type of thing. So I really saw the difference in how your life is affected based on how you understand money. So I would say I have a well-rounded view of money from that. It's pretty unique and it definitely influences how I view money today. But yeah, it was openly spoken about at my parents' house who was better with money, about the idea of investing, the fact you need to save, you need to sacrifice those things. So I was really fortunate to be exposed to both, but especially know the benefits and the downsides of both too.
Yeah, I kind of have a similar story with my grandparents. I've spoken about it on the podcast before, but one set of my grandparents were really good with money and the other set weren't. And it's been crazy to see how differently they live their lives. And like one of them can kind of do whatever they want. They're very comfortable. They are a lot healthier as well versus the other set. They're just struggling all the time and there's lots of stress. And like seeing the 2 completely different lifestyles definitely drilled into me very early on that you have to be kind of more frugal, because my grandparents who are well off are so frugal, like so frugal. They will finish everything on your plate if you don't eat it. They won't let anything go to waste. They were arguing about like a $20 dress the other day. Like they're very frugal, but it was interesting seeing like the 2 different perspectives, kind of like your parents, I guess. Like I didn't have to live with them, but I still saw like the conversations and the stress around it, which like I didn't want to be stressed about money.
Yeah, definitely. And another main thing I noted is that the more money one of my parents had, the more frugal, like one of them had more money, but was also way more frugal.
Yeah.
Whereas another parent, their spending decisions were drastically different, but they didn't have the money to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that drilled home the importance of not only earning good money, but managing your money.
Making those sacrifices and decisions along the way and like really being intentional about it. Like being like, do we really need to spend on this? Is it something that we want? I really wanted Foxtel when I was younger because all my friends had it, but my mum and dad were just like, no, we don't have Foxtel. That's not for us.
That's a blast from the past now.
Yes. It was one of the things that was always like, oh, but I want it. When I went to someone's house and they had the Foxtel remote, you'd be like, oh my God, look at all these things. But no, not
I
for
know
me.
exactly what you mean.
So one of your parents, they owned property. Did they take you to inspections and auctions and things like that as a kid?
Not inspections or auctions, actually. They were kind of private, I would say, about like specifically what they own, but we're very open about the fact that you need to own property, if that makes sense. And in Hobart, we actually don't have any auctions or anything.
Really?
Yeah. It's really a Melbourne thing, Melbourne and Sydney.
Interesting.
Yeah, they've just started bringing it in Hobart. But yeah, we lived, you might have seen if you've seen Emily's TikTok or Instagram, but we've lived in like 20 houses or something.
Yeah, I've seen her do it like one for every year of her life or something. Yeah.
Wild. So we definitely were exposed to a lot of different property, and not all of those were owned properties. Some of them were rentals, some of them were properties that our parents owned. So we were exposed to a lot of different type of property, but not specifically, investment properties.
How did you decide you wanted to buy a property then? So you kind of like knew that you should from one of your parents, but when did the decision actually come around where you're like, cool, this is something I'm going to save for and do myself?
Yeah, there's probably a few parts to that. The first part is my mum was always massive on goal setting. Mm-hmm. So ever since we were young, like every year, it's like, okay, what are your goals for this year and how are you going to achieve them? And like really we deep dove into those things. It wasn't just like, I want to achieve this year, like this year and leave it. It's like, how are you actually going to do that? and what are you doing every week to get to that?
That's amazing.
Yeah, like massive perks. So glad I learned that stuff young.
Do you have an example of one you had as a kid or a teenager or whatever?
It would have been like it wouldn't have been financial related. I reckon one of them would have been like make the first basketball team or something.
Oh, that's
it's
amazing.
Like,
but yeah.
Yeah. What are you going to do to do that? And it's like, okay, I'm going to go to training, but I'm also going to train 2 hours extra outside of that, like things like that. And then I actually started working from when I was as soon as you could. So I had saving goals from when I was really young as well.
Like 14? Can you work at 14 in Hobart as well?
I think it's 14 and 9 months, like
something random.
14 and change.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like the day I could, I applied for jobs. But that's the goal setting side of things. And then in terms of who influenced me to be frugal and that type of stuff, I mentioned in another episode, I was very involved in this FIRE movement, which is financially independent, retired early. So I had a lot of people influence me about how to be frugal and actually save for the deposit. And then how did I know to actually buy a property? That was my dad, who's like experienced in the property world. So I was really lucky to have him on my side when it came to I've now got the money and I want to purchase. What do I actually do? That was, I'm in a really privileged position to have someone in my corner who knows that type of thing. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about being a buyer's advocate too, because I came from a family where that was spoken about and like my hand got held the whole way through, like in terms of what do I actually do. But not everyone's exposed to that. And it can be really scary when you've finally saved up money to buy a property and you're like, okay, what do I actually do? And the cost of stuffing that up is drastic. Like even if you had like, you know how everyone has that like second uncle who's like apparently a property guru?
Or like, Bitcoin crypto guru, yeah.
Yeah, and if you went to them with your deposit and said, what should I buy? Like the outcome could be drastically different to someone who actually knows.
Yeah.
So I was in a privileged position to have someone who actually knows what to do with it, but it's made me really passionate about being that person for other people now.
Yeah, it's amazing. We'll get to like the process soon because I'm curious to hear how you even decided what to buy. But going back to saving for the deposit, because that's a big challenge for so many people. So you started working really early. What was that first job?
At Coles supermarket.
Coles, amazing.
Yeah, I started stacking shelves, which I was awful at, and then moved to the checkout. But I was there from when I could work until my second year of uni.
Okay, ages.
Yeah.
Was that always did you have a few jobs as well?
Yeah, I had a second job that I picked up once I decided I wanted to save for a house. I was like, I can't save for this with one job. Where's my second one? So I started working at a hotel.
Okay.
And between the two, I'd probably work 60 or 65 hours a week from when I finished school in my gap year.
Great, in your gap year.
Yeah.
So you had a year off to save to buy property.
Yeah.
Did you work those jobs while you were at uni as well?
I worked 2 jobs for my first year of uni. And then it became obvious I could only
do one.
Handle one. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar thing because I was working too much. So I failed a unit my second semester of uni. And then I had to go part-time, which was great because I could keep working full-time. But yeah, it's pretty impossible to try and work 60 hours a week while trying to also do uni full-time. But I like the gap year idea. Yeah,
I think if you've got a really clear idea of what you want to do in your gap year, or actually if you've got no idea what you want to do at all, then you should take a gap year. If you know exactly what you want to study and you've got no savings goals, I think my opinion would be go to uni. But the idea of having unlimited time and zero responsibility on a gap year to be able to work and save as much as possible makes so much sense.
Did you take the gap year literally just to save for a property?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, I caved though.
Yeah.
So my original goal was to save for it in a year, and all of my friends were in Europe and they all went for like 3 or 6 months and spent all their money on that. But I actually had been saving more money than I thought I could during that time. And so I booked 4 weeks to Europe.
That's okay. You have to do both.
Yeah. I'm really glad I did it because I haven't really had the chance to travel properly since then. But yeah, it definitely made my goal of saving for a property, just the time horizon became longer. Yeah.
I think it's so important to not be too much of an all or nothing person. Like I find a lot of people like, oh, it's Europe or the house, but you can kind of do both if you make sacrifices in other ways. Like you did go to Europe, you did buy a really great property. How much was your deposit goal?
A scary number.
What's the scary number?
Like 40,000.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's not too scary.
Well, Hobart property is quite cheap.
Yeah, because my first deposit was 52,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my parents helped me with part of the deposit and then I had to chip in for the other part.
Yeah, it was 40,000. And how long did it take you in the end to save?
Yeah, well, my goal was for it to be 1 year, but it was more like 18 months. But my property purchase wasn't for 2 years after I finished school. So I started looking really intensely, but I was looking for a very specific type of property. And then it took 6 months to find that type of property. But I saved for it in 18 months.
Amazing. All by working at a hotel as did you say you were like a concierge person?
Yeah, best job ever.
Valet driver?
Yeah, it was so good. And it was just like, same as Coles, they're both service jobs where your client, call it client facing, but you're people facing all day.
Yeah. And then I loved the penalty rates of working those kind of jobs. And you could do like all the public holidays, all the Sundays. They were open on Christmas sometimes as well. Like you could get the penalty rates if you wanted to, which is an amazing hack.
Definitely. And especially in your year of sacrifice, like I worked Christmas, Boxing Day, although I did take New Year's off.
Yeah.
But like where I could, you could just double down.
Yeah. Same with my job. I was a support worker for a while because they staff group homes 24/7 and we could just do live-in shifts. So if you got Christmas and Boxing Day, you'd be getting, because our shifts were like 18 hours of active time and then 6 hours of sleep time. But if you had that like shift over Christmas and Boxing Day, you would get like whatever that is, 36 hours of penalty rates. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it was easy to make like $5,000 in like that week pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. I heard you talk about that on another podcast. And
yeah.
I was like, what?
Because it's not fun,
$5,000
obviously.
in a week.
Yeah. It's not fun to be away during those times, but like it's such an easy hack to make more money because like most people don't want to work Christmas. Most people had families as well and they wanted to go back and spend time with their kids. So it was easy to be like, I'll do all the shifts. That's fine. And then it was like, yeah, accelerated my way to saving for my deposit.
Yeah. I think it's so worth it. And it highlights the sacrifices that you can make at that age. Like if you're 40 years old with a family, you can't just, well, I'm sure some people do, but you would ideally not work Christmas, Boxing Day and New Year. Like you have people that you have responsibilities for.
If you've got a 5-year-old kid, you don't want to be like, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I'm working.
Yeah.
You know? But when you're that age, it's like socially acceptable. Like, sorry guys, I'm not coming to Christmas this year. I'm saving for a house.
And it was kind of normalized in my family because they'd made a lot of sacrifices as well. My dad does FIFO and would do FIFO to random countries in Africa. So his like FIFO stints were quite long, sometimes 3 months at a time. So it was very normal for him to be away for Christmas. And it was just like, oh, he's working, he's saving for something else. Like that's the sacrifice you make. So it wasn't like an environment where my family was like, oh my God, how could you do that? Like lots of people did that.
Yeah. Wow. It's so great that you had a family that understands that too. Because I got shamed like if I miss things sometimes.
Oh, really?
And yeah, from certain people, they just couldn't understand. Whereas my parent, who's great with money and believes in sacrifice, was like, yeah, cool, go work.
I feel like, sometimes it was too normalized in my family. Like my dad definitely put work before a lot of other stuff for ages and it like worked for them. So I think it's interesting trying to find that balance of like, you can't give up everything, but also like it's only temporary. Like you said, you were only saving for 18 months. It's not like you were saving for 10 years and you gave up every single Christmas. And like some people have to do that just to survive. Like there's always people who are always working at service stations and whatever else you need to work at over Christmas.
Yeah, so true. I think the idea of it not being forever is important to remember.
Yeah. And like you said you had a time frame. You knew how much you had to save every week to get to your goal.
Yeah.
That's such a good thing that was it your mum who did the goal setting?
Yeah, she's amazing for that stuff.
We all need to do that. So good. And I always get people asking for tips for their kids to teach them about money. So it's such a good hack of like, get them into goal setting, even if it's not money goal setting, just like in that mindset of here's what I need to do every week to reach a goal in 6 months or something.
Yeah, exactly. And that weekly thing I think is so important because when you set a goal of I want to save like 40 or 50 grand, you kind of look at it and it's like, well, when is that ever going to happen? Yeah. If you break it down into how long am I going to give myself to do this and then how much do I need to save a week, it's so much less scary and like actually achievable.
Let me work it out. I'm curious. So I think 40 grand over 18 months isn't
like 500.
Yeah, 2,200 a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is not hard to do if you're working 2 jobs.
And living at home.
Living at home, have no responsibility. Like, yeah, I understand that's probably a position of privilege in terms of being able to live at home for free. I didn't pay any rent at home or anything like that. But if you're someone in that position, it's not so much of a scary number when you put it into a weekly goal.
Yeah, and when you take advantage of that situation. So I think the average age to move out of home is definitely after 22. I've had a look a few times. Lots of people like to hold that against me because I lived at home until I was 22 as well. But yeah, it's definitely like take advantage of that situation if you're in it. I know a lot of people are moving back in with their parents to save. Like if that's an option, do it, use it.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so much easier to live with your parents until it makes sense to move out than to jump the gun, move out early and then have to like, I wouldn't say people are taking a step backwards because they're not, but it can feel mentally like you're taking a step backwards if you move out too early and then move back in with your parents.
Yeah. And it's hard to fit back in as well. Like I've gone back home just to like stay for a little while, and it's like everyone else has their new routines now, and you're kind of just like, this isn't really my home anymore. And it takes an adjustment for sure when you're used to being an adult and then you're kind of being treated as a kid again.
Yeah,
interesting.
Definitely.
So what was the property you bought? What were you said you spent 6 months looking for it. What was the criteria? Why so long?
I would have been every real estate agent's worst nightmare, I reckon.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was looking for a very specific property. So I only wanted to buy a property that I could subdivide and build a property on the back.
Mm-hmm.
So from a land perspective, it had to be on 650 meters squared or more, because that's the requirements in Hobart. You need 325 meters per block.
Okay.
And then the house needed to be situated at the front of the block so that you could actually put one on the back of the block. Then there needs to be 3.5 meters wide driveway so that you could get access to the back. That's like the council requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And then the house at the front had to be in good enough condition to rent it out, because I was storing everything at the purchase. So I couldn't afford to like then do it up afterwards immediately. Mm-hmm. So it needed to be in rentable condition as well. They were the main requirements. And then, the property I purchased was a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in a suburb called Glenorchy in Hobart. It's like 15, 20 minutes from the city. It was on 800 meters squared roughly, with a really massive wide driveway. Perfect. Positioned right at the front of the block. Mm-hmm. And it had been renovated inside, but looked awful from the street.
Okay.
So like from inside, all the work had been done. I didn't have to pay for that. And if I wanted to make it look nicer and add some value, I could just render and paint the outside,
that's
which
like
I
the
did.
Easy bit.
The easiest part, but the ad was so ugly.
Oh, really?
Like they put the photo of the outside as the front part of the ad.
Oh, no.
And I reckon almost everyone would have scrolled past it because it just looked like awful. If you didn't get to see what it looked inside, you almost would have thought it was like close to a knockdown.
Crazy. So you had like really good luck that they weren't good at advertising it.
Yeah, definitely. And when I bought it, I actually bought it on the day that it went online. So
oh, wow.
Yeah.
You're like, fine, found
no
it.
one
It's
really
the
had
one.
the chance.
So did you get pre-approval beforehand?
Yeah, I had pre-approval for quite some time. Like I was actively in the market for 6 months, which I probably wouldn't advise. I always believe in timing the market over timing the market in terms of spending a long time to make the decision. Mm-hmm. But in this case, it is what it is.
Yeah. And when you're young as well, like it's hard to be like, this is my first time. I know what I'm going to buy. I'm just going to buy something. Like it takes you a while to get comfortable with the idea of something as well. And like you bought it so early still. It was like you were 22.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
Did you live in it?
No, I rented it out immediately. So I bought it for $440,000.
Everyone's probably so jealous listening to this. 800 square meters, 440, the dream. Yeah, Hobart.
I know, but also remember it's Hobart. Like,
and it was a few years ago.
Yeah. It was March of 2020, start of COVID.
Oh, I bought mine in April 2020 because no one else was really buying. Yeah.
Yeah, because everyone was telling you not to buy.
Yeah.
I was like, I've been looking for 6 months. I'm not giving up now.
Yeah, I'm ready. Was Hobart like fine during COVID as well mostly?
We were just like shut off from everyone.
Yeah, same with WA back then. Yeah.
But purchased for $440,000 and rented it out for $450,000, which at the time paid for itself because interest rates
were tiny.
Yeah, so small back then. Rented it out. It took care of itself while I got approval to build the unit at the back of the property. Mm-hmm. And then, I built the unit on the back. That cost me just under $350,000 when construction costs were a lot lower. But also I got 2 government grants because it was COVID.
Oh, building ones.
Yeah. I got $45,000 in government grants.
Wow. That's such good timing.
I know. The timing of the whole thing is just absurd. Like I think I would be hard to replicate it today. Everything, like just absolutely everything worked in my favor. I got $45,000 in government grants, which brought my build cost down to $300,000.
Amazing.
Yes.
And you were like definitely working really hard in the lead up to that, like to put yourself in the position to take advantage of all these grants. But so lucky that happened. Right.
Yeah. I couldn't do it. Even if I did the exact same hard work and did it today, I couldn't get the same return.
No.
Because when that property was finished, it was valued at $700,000. So I had instantly $400,000 of equity.
Why so much? That's crazy.
Well, it's actually not uncommon for developing. And in a normal market, you would see really good gain in the back unit or whichever one you build at the cost of, the front one going down because you no longer have the land value on the back and also someone's living in your backyard essentially. But because of the timing of the market, I sold the front property 2 years later, pretty much as soon as the back one had finished for $605,000. So I made a gain of like $165K on the front property.
Amazing.
Which is like that isn't normal. Usually you would sell it for the same or less and you would get this great gain at the back. But because of the timing, it
all
worked out that way. Yeah.
How was getting approval for the council to like let you build on the back? Did you know what to do there?
Oh, I was so out of my depth, like unbelievable. But I will say if you're thinking of doing something like this, I outsourced all of it because it just like I'm pretty open in saying when something's above my head and like I would rather just someone actually do it who knows what to do. So I got the person who was building my home at the back, they're called Wilson Homes. They're a builder in Hobart and they managed the whole approval process.
Okay, amazing. So it all sounds like it went well. Were there any things that were extra stressful or that went wrong along the way?
I had some troubles with the front property. I had like roof repairs and that type of thing. And that was stressful trying to grab the cash for that. But outside of that, I really think I was very fortunate in how it went. Like it almost couldn't have gone better. It was a stressful time in my life because for some of it, I was working 2 jobs. I was at uni and I was also like semi-micromanaging the people building my house.
Yep.
Like we had to talk to them a lot. Even if you didn't want to, you still have to, like you're involved in the build.
There's always things that pop up, yeah.
Yeah, and there's emails, there's invoices, there's a liaising with the bank.
The emails, so many emails. Especially when you've got tenants as well if they want a lot of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. My tenants were actually amazing in the front property. Yeah, the best tenants ever. But there was nothing that was unforeseen. But I think that's probably the benefit of going with someone who knows what they're doing in terms of engaging like the builder to do the one at the back and looking after the approvals. One thing is it took a lot longer than I would have ever anticipated.
I hear that all the time with building. Yeah. I had so much longer onto your timeline if you are building.
Yeah. It always costs more than you think and it always takes longer. And even though it's a cheap build cost, $300K after grants, it started way less than that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. How much did it go up by?
Well, the actual build cost was $198,000. I remember just under $200,000. The extra $100K was I had to get a new driveway, new drainage, all these things. It probably went up in variations by like $40,000 to $50,000.
Oh my God. Was that stressful or were you kind of expecting it?
Everyone had told me it was going to cost more, but I always was like, oh, that's just what everyone says.
Yeah,
so like it was like not a surprise, but it kind of was.
Yeah, it still hurts a little bit to be like, oh, 40 grand, like that's a lot.
Yeah, and it was eating into what it was eating into the potential equity of the property, but it got valued for so much more than I thought it was ever going to get valued for. So it kind of made up for it.
Yeah. What did you do? Did you live in the back one or did you rent that one out?
Yeah, I had to live in it for 6 months to get those 2 government grants. Yeah, so I lived in that and just paid the mortgage by myself. It's now flipped to a rental property and then it's tax-free for 6 years. So that's a rental property at the moment and I'll probably sell it before I have to pay tax on it.
Amazing. It sounds like it's done so well and you've made it sound like quite, I know the timing and everything, but quite achievable in terms of you worked your 2 jobs, you saved a lot for 18 months, whatever it was, and now you've got this property that's turned out really well.
Yeah, I think I have to hone in on the fact that if I did it again today,
it wouldn't,
could I replicate it? Probably not. It's an amazing result. Could you achieve something probably not similar, but could you achieve a great gain from doing development? Absolutely.
Yeah, especially when you take the time to do the research, you find exactly what you want. You're not getting swayed by like a fancy new apartment. You're just like, here's my criteria. I'm not buying anything until it meets my criteria. Here we are.
Yeah. Taking any emotion out of it. And it's funny you say that because I actually didn't show the property to any of my friends because I knew they would be like, that's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Why would you buy that? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everyone's like, I wouldn't want to live in that. So why would you buy it? It's like, I'm not buying it because it would be nice to live in. I'm buying it because the numbers stack up.
Yeah, and because you can make it look nicer.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. It's so interesting how emotion does weigh on things like that. Like I bought my apartment because I thought I wanted to live in it and I'm just lucky it ended up being a decent investment. But I was like, I showed everyone. I was like, this is so exciting. Look at my new apartment. It was like pretty, it was built, but it was new. So I still got the first home buyer's grant. But yeah, very different compared to like, oh, the house is ugly.
Yeah, and you can get a really great looking apartment for the same price as a really bad looking house in Hobart. Very
in
specific
Perth as well.
Hobart. Yeah. And a lot of people would opt for that apartment, which may or may not outperform. I've heard about your apartment because it's only like one of so few apartments in that area. It seems like it's done amazing.
It was like a government initiative to build more like high density housing in suburbs that didn't have any apartments. So it's like 14 of them in one block, but there's none in that suburb and none in the suburbs around it. So you can either buy a house for $800,000 or you can buy one of those few apartments. So it's in a very like good location for me, but I was just lucky it worked out like that because I didn't know all this stuff back then. I was just like, oh yeah, works well. Like it's not a high rise in the city. I want to live there. It's got all the amenities I need. It was quite affordable back then as well. But yeah, it worked out well for me.
Yeah. And if you're looking to sell it to an owner or occupier, it usually makes sense that a property that makes sense to you for reasons that make it appealing to an owner-occupier will make it a good investment if an owner-occupier buys it.
Yeah.
But also I heard it's been positively cash flowed.
The whole time. Because it's Perth. And I had a 20% deposit, which helped as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
That's
the 20%,
amazing.
also low strata fees. Like they were $400 a quarter. Now they're like $600, which is like fine. And then, because like I locked in a low interest rate, it stayed low for a while.
Wow. Yeah, I heard you locked in like
2.6 for 5 years. So I've got one more year left.
Wow.
Yes.
You'd be loving that.
Yeah, it's been great. But yeah, luckily because Perth was so positively geared. I guess it's kind of changing now, but I feel like the rents kind of matched the rest of Australia, but property prices were so low for so long that it was just like most things were.
Yeah, definitely.
So good. So it sounds like you made quite a few sacrifices in terms of your time. Like you worked a lot. Were there any sacrifices you made in terms of spending on things?
Yes, definitely. Just because I couldn't have saved the amount I wanted to without being frugal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, as I say, and I think a lot of financial people would say, is the years to sacrifice when you're 18. Like it just made the most sense to me. And I'd been, as I say, heavily involved in that like FIRE movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I just knew that the sacrifice was going to be worth it. So I definitely made sacrifices. I stopped going out as much. I stopped drinking, like all of those things, which realistically should probably be a luxury more than like a necessity. But I kind of viewed them as something that was just part of my life. So I think, short answer, I did make sacrifices, but nothing drastic. And at an age where it's so socially acceptable.
Yeah.
Like
everyone's on a budget when you're at uni.
Yeah. And everyone's working 2 jobs. People are living at home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you don't want to go out for dinner when you're 18 because you don't have enough money, that's like an acceptable thing to say. Now that I think, if anything, now I make more sacrifice because of my age. Like I make the same decisions, but it seems like a bigger sacrifice now because it's like 7 years later. And to say I'm not going out to dinner, it costs too much when you're 25, like isn't as socially acceptable as when you're 18.
Interesting. I agree completely, but it is very interesting where it's like you're still trying to, there's a lot more keeping up, I guess, and people are earning a lot more money and there's a huge variety in wages. Like you were saying, the real estate agents earning $1 million versus like someone working in healthcare earning like 80 grand. Like there's a huge difference in salaries and it's a lot harder to negotiate that as well and be like, I want to hang out with my childhood friend, but they want to go to this $400 restaurant. I don't want to go.
Yeah, it's so true. I just rely on my framework of like, is this helping me get to my goals? If yes, do it. If not, don't do it. I'm like kind of harsh about that.
Yeah.
But I think it really works. And you probably don't have to be as extreme as that, but it's always something to think about. Like, do I need to go out for this really expensive dinner? And I say that kind of hypocritically because me and my partner, like that's the one thing we spend money on.
Going out to eat.
Yeah. We don't do it very often, but when we go out to eat, we like meal prep all week, keep it as low as possible.
Perfect.
And like probably once a month we'll go out for a nice dinner.
I love like vouchers and coupons and getting discounts and like, what is it called? First Table, you can get 50% off, all the entertainment books. Like I love finding something like that to get cheap food over like, I think the joy of like saving is more fun than actually going out to eat all of the time. Like, oh, look at my good deal. But yeah, it's good to like either prioritize it like once a month or something or find a way to cut back on it.
Yeah. It sounds like you gamify your...
Oh, definitely.
I think that's the best way to do it. And everyone who's good at saving money or being frugal has like almost made it a game or a challenge to themselves.
Yeah, well, you have to enjoy it. Otherwise, it's just like if it's boring and you're doing it every day or you hate it, like you're not going to stick to it. But if you've made it exciting and you've made it like a big fun thing where you're like, look what I've done this week, like it makes it fun.
Yeah.
Do you talk to your friends about money?
Not really. I never have.
Interesting.
And I think because it fell on deaf ears, when I found this, I keep going back to it, but when I found this FIRE movement, I was the biggest advocate you've ever seen for like financially independent, retired early. I was like, guys, we need to like sacrifice, save money, invest. And I was like, have you heard about ETFs? Like getting everyone, trying to educate everyone. And everyone was just kind of like, we don't care.
Yeah.
And so I learned pretty quickly that even though I love that topic, the people that I was hanging out with couldn't care less. And I felt like it was almost kind of annoying if I spoke about it.
Yeah. Interesting. Did they know about your property purchase? Did you keep that a secret?
No, they knew about it, definitely. And Instagram heard about it, you know.
Okay,
you can't get a photo out the front.
Yeah.
But my journey to get there, no. Like I wouldn't tell people when I'm looking at property and that type of stuff. They knew that I purchased property. But as I said, I didn't show them the exact property because I just knew it would get absolutely like slammed. And I'm transparent now with how much money I've made from it or like how much equity I've gotten. But back then, I wouldn't have been like, hey guys, I've got this much in property.
Yeah, especially when you don't see other people doing it too. You don't want to be like the only one if your friends aren't interested and you've not seen other people doing it. Like it's good that it's becoming more normalized these days, but I feel like it definitely wasn't, especially when you're younger.
Yeah, I think you've also got to be careful not to rub it in people's faces.
Yeah, like when you're excited and they're struggling. Because I definitely get very like excited about things. I'm like, oh my God, look at this great thing. Like I'd love to be like, same in your other episode, you said it was your highest cash month so far, which is so exciting. And I would love to be like, oh my God, I made the most money I've ever made. But most people are just like, good for you. I haven't. So please stop rubbing it in my face. It's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'm like an overly conscious person when it comes to that type of stuff. I'll always think, how's this going to affect someone before I say it?
Yeah.
Different now that we're in a podcast studio, I'll happily talk about it because that's the agenda.
Yeah.
But I would never be like, hey guys, I made this much money this month. Yeah.
That's me on Instagram. But yeah, it's the environment for it.
Yeah,
different.
exactly.
Yeah. You mentioned ETFs. Do you still invest in ETFs?
Not at the moment. I did. I invested in VAS, VTS and VGS.
Perfect.
All after I purchased my first property and before I paid for my second property for like a year. And it was in COVID when they were like on a massive discount. And all the same people that I had been listening to, like Graham, Stefan and stuff, were like, everything's on discount, buy it, especially index funds is exactly what they preach. So I bought quite a lot of that during COVID for like ridiculous prices. I checked them before I came in here because I was like, I know I'm going to be asked about this. And it's just like so depressing to know I don't have them anymore.
Oh no. Did you sell them all to buy your second property?
Yeah. Which in turn made drastically more money than I could have from holding them. But still, if I had have held them, I would have made good money too.
Yeah. I've always been a bit anti-property a little bit, being like, oh, it takes up so much time. It costs a lot of money. You are putting a lot of risk into buying one single asset versus shares. You can buy lots of different ones. But even the return on my apartment versus the return on my shares, like the apartment's done so much better. And I put like 50 grand in as my deposit. The rent has paid for all of my mortgage and expenses so far. It's gone up like at least 100,000, probably more, versus my 200,000 I put into shares has gone up maybe 30 or 40 grand, which is, just a crazy difference.
Yeah, I feel like we could debate property and shares for eternity.
The more I like try and pretend I don't like property, the more like property is just the answer.
Yeah. And I think the key things are, as most people know, like shares, the main benefit obviously being liquid. Like if you wanted to sell tomorrow, you could. If you wanted to sell your property tomorrow and it's got a tenant in it, maybe not, you know?
And you can't just sell part of it. You have to sell the whole thing.
Yeah. And then the cost associated with, in terms of, I suppose tax is equivalent for both, but like paying an agent, all of those things is pretty drastic. But the one thing, which of course you know about property, is just the leverage.
Leverage is
like
so good.
if you invested the same $200,000 in property and got $2 million worth of property,
it would have done so well.
Yeah. Even if that went up 10%, you get 100% on your money.
Yeah.
But if you put the same $200,000 into shares and get 10%, you only get 10%.
Yeah. I think it's been really good because I've lived a pretty random life. And I think if I had bought a few properties early on, I probably wouldn't have moved and I wouldn't have quit my job and I wouldn't have done all this stuff. So I think it's definitely pros and cons. When you're looking at just the spreadsheet answers, property is like, can be so much better, can be bad if you buy a terrible one. But I think it's important to not ignore the importance of leverage. And like our retirement system is based off us owning our home outright when we retire. So not leaving that out of the conversation as well.
Yeah, I saw you post something about that recently.
Yeah.
And it's so true. Like everyone kind of shies away from the conversation or is angry about it. But I think, we both seem pretty logical in the fact that like that's just the way it is. So how are we going to adapt to like optimize for that outcome? Because you do have to own a home in retirement.
Yeah. And you can still consider the ethics and be like a really nice landlord and be considerate of people and not just try and like raise rents as much as you can every week or whatever. But you do have to prepare for your future too. And I think it's quite the negativity around buying property at the moment, I think is going to be quite damaging to those who probably are the ones who need to buy property. But that's a whole other podcast episode. Won't dive into that now.
It's a long debate.
Yes. What are your money goals now?
My money goals now are really different to what they were when I first bought. Like my money goal for a long time was just to buy my first property and also the FIRE movement, which I backed so hard. 30. Yeah, I want to be retired by 30 for some reason. Who was I going to hang out when I was 30?
Are you on track to retire by 30 if you want to?
If I wanted to, I think I probably could, but
cool.
I'm never going to want to. Like I just won't. So my money goals have changed a lot, mostly because I enjoy what I do now. But I just recently turned 25 earlier this month. And every time I turn a new age, I have a life crisis about what I'm going to do. So I spent like 2 weeks brainstorming.
Yep.
What are my money goals now? When I do my goal setting, it's all centered around health, wealth, and relationships. So my wealth ones for this year, I want to acquire $1 million more in property this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second wealth goal is that I want to keep my monthly expenses as they are.
Mm-hmm.
So I've recently increased my income, or like I guess I've gradually increased my income quite drastically from what it was a few years ago. But my main goal is to keep my expenses the same so that my lifestyle inflation doesn't eat away at the new money I've got, and I can invest as much money as possible from this increased income.
Amazing. Where do you want to buy your next property?
Well, funnily enough, I've been speaking to Henderson Advocacy.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
To potentially use them. Otherwise, I'll do another development in Hobart, but I'm probably going to outsource it now that I'm a buyer's advocate and see the benefits of using one.
Yeah.
I want to use an investment specific one and tell me where's the best place in all of Australia to invest and why. And if I agree with it, go with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to buy another property this year as well. But yeah, I'm definitely going to use an advocate too, because I don't want to get too sidetracked by like, oh, that looks pretty, or like, I don't know, I feel like I'm a bit biased about certain suburbs as well. And I'm looking at like them from would I want to live there, not actually is it a good investment. So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing to buy property with your money, but you're not living in it.
Yeah. But I am very like, oh, but there's no sunlight in this one room. And like, yeah, it depends on so many different things.
Definitely. Where will you look to buy property?
I always want to buy in Perth again, but like I already have one in Perth, and I don't know, I think I should look in other areas, maybe Brisbane, maybe Queensland, don't know, somewhere not Sydney or Melbourne yet, but yeah, maybe even Adelaide, but apparently there's land tax is really high there. Something is really high there, someone said.
Oh, right.
Yeah, Perth I know, so that would be easy, but probably Queensland if I can afford it.
Yeah, fair.
We'll see.
Amazing.
My dad has this thing around like the Olympics are coming, property prices will go up, and I know that's like one of many factors, but it'd be good to spread around Australia a bit more.
Yeah, definitely. Diversifying is important. You're so diversified though, like apart from property, in terms of having so many ETFs and then also having property.
Yeah. It's been good, but yeah, definitely time to buy more property.
Yeah.
Yay. Do you have a final tip for anyone who's listening who wants to buy property?
My top tip would just be me reiterating the importance of sacrificing and the fact that you're going to have to do it at some point if you've got goals to buy a property, and to bite the bullet and do it as early as possible, because it's much more socially acceptable to do it younger than older, which then makes it easier to do it when you're younger as opposed to older. I don't want that to deter anyone who's further through their life at an older age, but the same would apply. No matter how old you are, the best time to start sacrificing, in my opinion, is now.
Now, definitely. That's such a good piece of advice. And having a specific goal and just reminding yourself it's not forever. I had someone message me. She said she is, I think, in her mid-30s. She has moved rurally to work a job that's like 50 hours a week. She's got no real expenses because she can't spend any money. She's got like subsidized rent. And she keeps telling me her motto is, it's not forever.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's such a hack as well.
And I think that's such the difference. Like I heard you say this on another podcast with Emma about like moving and just not thinking this is not permanent. And the ability to think in the short term, this is what I have to do, but it's not forever, I think just pays dividends.
Yeah, definitely. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You have a TikTok. Where can everyone find your TikTok?
Oh, shout out to my TikTok.
Yeah.
My TikTok is Harry Wallace Property. Not very inventive. Same as my Instagram. So Instagram, TikTok, both Harry Wallace Property.
I love your little walkthroughs of
Thank
the
you.
property. So if you're curious about Melbourne property, go watch those.
Yeah, definitely. I walk through a lot of property and I know not everyone else gets to do it because they don't have the time. So I just show it on my TikToks as if they've walked through it.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you found this episode helpful, please rate us 5 stars, write a review, or share with a friend. If you're new to investing, make sure to listen to our first 10 episodes. Follow us at Get Rich Slow Club or Tash at Tash Invest or me at Ana Cristina.
This show was brought to you by Natasha Etchman, who is an authorised representative 1299881 of Guideway Financial Services, AFSL 420367, and Perla, who is an authorised representative 1281540 of Sanlam Private Wealth, AFSL 337927. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing. So make sure you check out our financial services guides and read the product disclosure statement and target market determination for any investments you're considering. See our show notes for more info.